Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show Review with Mike G, the show of Alliance, the show of Psychology, the show of West Side Story. Take that and gin. That is right. We are talking about Hendrick's gin today with the beautiful, the charming, the British Mattias Horseman, the U.S. brand ambassador for Hendrick's gin. We sat down recently in San Antonio and waxed poetic about life, waxed poetic about Mattias looking like a model and giving each other digs everywhere in between. It was a great chat, and Mattias will actually be in Austin next week. Hopefully we can grab a martini or two. So I'm sure you guys are going to love this chat. I really think it's a great repartee between two punk-ass guys. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy this great chat with Mattias Horseman of Hendrick's Gin.
Probably West Side Story. I mean,
it's pretty good.
It set the foundation for my life right there.
Did it really?
Great. I mean, the hopeless romantics trying to find the one.
Yeah.
That sounds perfect to me.
Jet or a shark, then?
Ooh.
Edgy or soft lover boy?
Gotta say, I mean, hey, look at me. I'm probably a soft lover boy, right?
Yeah.
I gotta say, no, probably sharks all the way. They was always kind of, yeah, sharks was always a good one.
I think so. I don't know that you can do any wrong. You get a little bit of street cred with both.
Absolutely.
To make some sense. I also was going to ask you to be cheeky. Does Robbie Williams know you left Take That? Is he aware that you left and now are pursuing a solo
Well, you have to have talent to be in one of those.
Is that true?
I mean, maybe that's why I left. I'm going to explore my own avenues of creativity and singing.
So you get the acting thing, but did you ever, and I'm not trying to hit on you, it's too early for that, but you were ever a model? Anything like that? You got the height and the jawbone for it, as we were talking earlier?
Bits and pieces throughout my life. I think I've always been trying to explore that area, right? Like being in front of the camera. I actually like being behind the camera more.
Really?
I worked as a fashion photography assistant in New York for a summer. With my cousin was a photography agent.
No
so
kidding.
I actually love being behind the camera, probably more than in front of it.
What about a film camera?
Film camera
pictures, yeah.
You know, I think I always get a little nervous in front of camera.
Really?
If you see me on the news, kind of talking about cocktails and stuff, you might not think it, but it's a very nerve-wracking experience.
Interesting.
And so I've always, it's something I've been working on, and I think being in the ambassador role has definitely helped that for sure.
You have an audience in a different state every day, basically.
Yeah. Hey, well, there's a great old quote that says, "The bar is the greatest stage in the world, and the audience changes every night." And I think that's 100% true.
And you can wear what you want. You can be, glam rock if you want.
But it's not even about wearing necessarily clothes. It's about wearing your personality too.
Interesting.
Because it's, what is that role of a bartender but to mold to these different people?
Yeah.
Do they want a shoulder to cry on? Do they want that loud, boisterous person, or do they want something else?
To that point, then, the ability to be agile with your communication styles.
Absolutely.
Do you ever feel like what is maybe some sense of superficiality, because you don't really talk about too much from behind the bar. Now, maybe if you're next to me, when now we have a couple drinks, we'll talk about more things. But you think that real superficiality, and do you think people are really able to be real when they're performing and putting on a different mask every night?
It's interesting. I studied psychology at university, and my dissertation was called On the Rocks with a Twist on Mental Health.
No shit.
And I did a second dissertation called Make It a Double, and it was a comprehensive analysis of stress in frontline hospitality workers.
Yeah.
And through these, I explored the nature of what it means to be a bartender, like from a psychological point of view. And I spoke to bartenders all across the UK. So I did 4 major cities. I did Chester, Liverpool, Manchester, and London.
Wow.
And I spoke to them about, what do they speak to customers about? Like, what, is it superficial things?
Right.
Is it
What's
meaningful
the line,
things?
right?
And I interviewed chain bars. So I guess like in America, you'd be looking at your Applebee's and your sort of mainstream places, Red Lobsters and whatever you have, Dave and Buster's or whatever.
That's the good one.
That's always fun, yeah. But then I interviewed more of the individual sort of cocktail bars as well. You know, I was down in London. I did Happiness Forgets and Savoy, and some really fantastic places like Oddfellows in Chester, and it was really cool to see the dynamic that different bartenders can actually have in talking to people. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I found that in the sort of those chain bars, you actually end up speaking about very superficial things, but after interviewing customers, that has a huge impact on them. So they like to talk about that. You know, they I don't want to say they live very, mundane lives by any means, because it's not necessarily a generalized statement, but when they go to these bars, they're expecting that. And so when their reality is met with these beautiful conversations about sports, weather, general life, that's what they want to talk about. But in the cocktail bars, the bartenders actually have this beautiful emotional and social intelligence to mold to these different people. And so when they're speaking about, there's an old saying, when you get behind a bar, the three things you don't talk about: relationships, politics, and religion. Right. The number one thing you speak about behind the bar is relationships and politics. Like it's kind of crazy.
That is crazy. So it's interesting. All right, to take it to kind of an academic way, perhaps the people frequenting cocktail bars, maybe they have a larger academic background, maybe more advanced degrees, or is there any connection?
I definitely wouldn't say in terms of academic that there's any connection, really. Okay. I think it's more of a, it's just a lifestyle, really, isn't it? Yeah. Like, I frequent everything from I live 157 paces away from my local bar in Chicago, and it's 250 beers, and you get to just sit and enjoy the company.
Right.
But I also frequent the place that's 4 blocks away that is one of the best bars in the country. So, it's pretty fun.
It's good. I mean, I like that it's both. I like that you can have those deep conversations, but you also can just talk about how much you hate so-and-so footballer, right?
Absolutely,
It's a kind of a nice thing. But for me, it's interesting because you have this rich background in understanding of psychology, which makes sense that you would want to go around and say, gin is a great lubricant, let's talk, let's have a real moment with each other. But do you ever miss the acting piece that potentially you could have went to Hollywood, potentially could be on set?
There's a great anecdotal story here for why I actually am in the hospitality industry, and it has to do with acting. It was a fork in my life there, and I could have gone down each path. It was either go down the acting route or go down the hospitality route. And my agent at the time called me and was like, okay, I'm not going to tell you what this audition's for, but I need you to say yes to coming down because I need to know whether you're committed or not. And I'd been really committed to the bar industry at the time, and it was a race day in Chester, which is like the biggest day horse racing. So there's like 80,000 people come into the town, and there was like 3 bars they wanted to go to, and we were like number 2. So 10 deep from 5:30 till 11:30 at night, and you'd take 45,000 pounds behind the bar between 4 bartenders. Like, it was nuts.
It's crazy.
And I talked to my boss, and my boss said, I will support you in whatever you do, but if you go to this audition, you don't have a job when you come back, because like it was such a busy day. And he's like, I need you. And I thought long and hard about it for a couple days, and I decided at the end of the day, do you know what? I really love the hospitality industry. It was a passion point, and my career with studying psychology had collided together in such a beautiful way. Wow. And I was like, I didn't feel comfortable in myself to go into acting because I was still a little nervous, and I think I didn't know myself well enough to be able to portray anything I wanted on camera.
Interesting.
So I decided, you know what, let me go find myself and go bartending.
So really all this is the method acting stage of your life. Just
in a way, and that's the thing. It's like, do I ever think the acting thing could come back in? Well, it's more about what I enjoyed about acting.
Yeah.
It was that outlet of creativity, and what do bartenders do but live in a perpetual state of creativity?
Yeah, it's true.
And I think at the end of the day, the acting thing, I think it's the key points that I enjoyed about it that I get to use every day in my life.
In a way, it's acting distilled into the finer points.
Absolutely. Distilled into the fabric of life.
See, we talked about puns earlier, so we had to kind of do a little bit.
Oh, we'll get a couple in here for sure.
Good. And keep in mind, for those people that can't see what's going on here, beyond being a wonderful, beautiful afternoon here in San Antonio, you are drinking a gin and tonic out of a beautiful teacup, excuse me.
I always am drinking out of the teacup, yeah.
Everything about you is groomed. Even your teacup.
The teacup is something that has become part of my life now, and it's I love it in every way. It's just fantastic. I carry it around in a holster on my belt.
A holster?
Yep. It's custom made by a leather worker, actually, in Albuquerque, Mexico.
I thought it was a codpiece. That is actually, but it is, in fact, a holster.
Well, there's some things you take with you from the acting world that are just fantastic. I did do a lot of Shakespeare. I was Lysander 4 times in A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Actually, that's a codpiece from Othello. Quite a large codpiece. Early on, we're talking about Dorset, and that's where you were born?
Yeah. I'm best of both worlds. My mother's actually from America. She's from Brooklyn, New York.
No shit.
And my dad is from England, from Fern down in Dorset.
Really?
So I grew up in Bournemouth on the south coast of England.
Yeah. How did these two people meet? Someone from Brooklyn?
So actually, my father set the tone for my life. I'm a Sagittarius, hopeless romantic at heart, and I think that actually is probably one of the reasons why I love working for Hendrick so much, is because that idea about romanticizing like life and enjoying the finer points and the wonderful mystique that can happen in a random moment truly comes out a lot in my job. But my father and mother were traveling in India. And they got paired together on a train while they were going on like an excursion to northern India to a place called Beas. And they got paired together on the train. Yeah. And the Indian guy who was pairing them up said, "Look after her, brother," to my dad, and gave him a little wink. And my dad said, "I will." And pretty much that was I do, because he proposed 3 weeks later in a rose garden, and he didn't have a ring, so he used the foil from a Cadbury's chocolate wrapper.
That's amazing.
And my mum said yes, and she was living in Switzerland at the time. So yeah, they moved back to the UK.
It's a beautiful thing.
And then I came along.
Does it make you optimistic about love, knowing that just random things can happen in India, and eventually?
It really does,
Nice,
and they're still happily together. So
that's amazing.
Absolutely, they truly set the tone for my life, and I think it's more about the love of those random moments.
Yeah.
So it's about living life to the full, because every moment can be something ridiculously special.
Absolutely.
If you take it for what it is,
Brilliant. I'm just having this conversation last night, in fact. There's this saying, of course, everybody knows it, stop and smell the roses. Very symbolic one, though. But it was actually a very touching story. This guy, he was coming in, he was from Rhode Island doing a pop-up at Chisme. We're drinking some mezcal, having some nice agave stuff. And he talked about how his son, at any moment, may lose both of his eyes. His sight is fleeting every day. It's some kind of retinal detachment, something to that nature. And he said, I bought him a camera that cost way more than it should have. My wife got pissed because every single moment he has may be his last to capture something visually and optically and something beautiful. So, question being, everybody has their sights on the next thing, right? The milestone's down there, it's just over the horizon. You're always looking at that. But then you miss everything in between.
Yeah, it's very true.
So the way that you live and you experiencing, is it absolutely to stop and smell?
In a way, I think we deal with balance so much in the cocktail world, right? Like every time I'm trying Hendrick's cocktails, I'm always looking for balance. Where does this fall on a spectrum? When I was 18 years old, I got asked in an interview, what do you want to do in 10 years?
Right.
And I said, I want to be a brand ambassador for William Grant.
No way.
I sort of had this idea. I saw the brand ambassador role and I was like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And throughout my time in the industry, family has been my goal. I'm an only child, but I've always been very close to my family.
Yeah.
So my bar family that I ended up having back in the UK was absolutely some of my closest friends in the world. They truly are family to me. My university friends were family to me. My Hendrick's family now is like truly my brothers,
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I didn't put a goal out there. I didn't think I want to do exactly this in a while. I had kind of a generalized idea,
right,
but I didn't have like a goal, like I want to be CEO of this company or whatever it is. I put family out into the ethos as like a little flag.
Sure.
And I didn't know which road would take me there, but every road I've taken has led me to a different point of the family aspect of things.
Interesting.
Having a company called the Cocktail Brothers for a while.
Right.
Again, because the industry is a family and we're all brothers and sisters in it. And then having families behind each bar, and now, of course, being part of William Grant as a family-owned company, truly has been a remarkable thing. So I think I have been living in the moment, but it's important to at least set something out there.
Some guideposts.
Just to have something so that you can start recognizing signposts along the way. Because if you're heading in a random direction, my God, believe me, it can take you to some beautiful places, I'm sure.
Sure.
But at the same point, if you have a little bit of that guidance, it probably helps a little light the way.
And it feels like you're pretty focused and have a particular perspective, and basically like parameters in the way that probably you travel and you meet people. But it's interesting, and if you notice as you get older, things that you thought were seemingly disparate and unrelated somehow start converging and turning into
these superpower things, family psychology, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Are you starting to notice these things, all these people, or all these things kind of coming together as you get older?
It's like a painting, right?
Yes,
and everything's a different color. If you know how to use them, you can create a masterpiece.
Amazing, yeah.
And it truly, I think, and working with such creative people has helped a lot to see the potential of seemingly unrelated facts.
Right.
Like, you never know. When I first saw the teacup at Hendrick's, I did not know that this would become such a part of who I am now.
Iconography, in a sense,
and it's very interesting to see those small things, and you can really, if you take something and you nurture it, there's no telling what the possibilities are.
That's an amazing point.
We had a great conversation recently about measuring unusuality, because obviously at Hendrick's we're all about the unusual, right?
Right. Can I say real quick?
Yeah.
I think it's Terry Gilliam inspired. That's what I think the whole aesthetic for Hendrick is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. I think, and again, the whole vibe of it has developed out of something so wonderful, such a wonderful liquid, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, being from Scotland, and we curiously infused it with rose and cucumber, was that beginning.
Yeah.
But developing that into this beautiful world that has become Hendrick's, right?
That's right, yeah.
Is so fantastic. And I think at the end of the day, when you take those ideas, you can it's not about necessarily measuring unusuality at the beginning. It's about nurturing unusuality, because at the end of it, anybody can be very unusual and creative,
right,
and having these fantastic ideas, but it's about looking at things in a different way.
Sure, and not, the States are very guilty of being form factored. You have to do this, there's 2.5 kids, have a dog, go to college. But what about punk rock, man? You know what I mean? Like, it has to be infused. We have to think in abrasive ways. We have to challenge each other. And I think that, and I don't do this with brands much. I don't like really going brand centric, but being disruptive to a sense and forcing people to think about gin in a different way is a very positive thing. And it ruffles the feathers. I think it's really necessary that Hendrick's does that. Because right now, more than ever, we're just agreeing or we're disagreeing together, and it's just so polarized. So it's nice to find this interstitial balance of creativity and art and strange Terry Gilliam-esque graphics.
I love that. Yeah,
I really do think
that's great description of it.
It's not goofy like Monty Python, but it's certainly crazy and creates this otherworldliness. So I'm curious. Only child, your father and mother met serendipitously in India, which is an amazing thing. Where does this passion for psychology and for people and the stage and art, where does that come from? Is your father in that industry? Is your mother?
My parents haven't. My parents don't drink, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they. It's very interesting, but they love flavor. My mother's an avid cook. They love Indian food. I think again stemming from this.
Makes some sense.
Yeah, a lot of connections over to that side of the world. So she's always loved cooking. My father eats very simply. Beans on toast with cheese was my staple growing up, and I loved it. My father and I have an affinity for ketchup. That's sort of my quirk. I eat ketchup with everything, whether it be pizza, spaghetti, whatever it is. I absolutely adore it.
You might come to Fists here in San Antonio if you put ketchup on everything.
You guys use ranch, so it's...
Well, that's right. Depending.
Yeah.
Hot sauce for me, always. So it's strange. But the compassion and the concern for other people, the interest in community, where does that come from?
I think it was, it stems back to a lot of things. But, I always remember seeing these pictures. My father used to take me around and he'd hold me up to a tree, and he'd be like, a leaf. And he would literally, and I would touch the leaf, and I'd explore it. And he would introduce me to the world in such a wonderful way.
Wow.
And, my parents, they're very, very inspiring people and captivating about life. If you look into it, they meditate every day for 2 hours.
Really?
Original hippies, I like to call them.
I like that a lot.
And so, you look and they have such clear and clear eyes and everything. It's absolutely fantastic. So
you have that too. There is a clarity to your... that's really strange. That's why I mentioned the model thing. You thought it was maybe half or backhanded. It really wasn't.
Thank you. If anybody wants to pay me to model something, that'd be great.
That's good. But when you walk into a bar or you walk into a place and someone has just this clarity and groundedness about them.
I was looking at that. Being in San Antonio for the cocktail conference, right, is a wonderful experience. And in fact, being in a bar, being anywhere where you're with such amazing people is such a wonderful joy.
Yeah.
But to walk into a room and to see these vibrant characters, right? I know you know Trevor really well, Trevor Schneider from Reka Vodka. You walk into a room with him and he captivates the audience.
Right.
And I noticed this a while ago. Eric Anderson and I, who are the Hendrick's ambassadors, along with Mark Studd and Fred Parent and everybody, we we captivate in a different way. There's a different light, and it's so interesting to see how every brand ambassador has this different aura and they captivate their audience in such a different way, and it's
Absolutely.
so fascinating to
Trevor
look
is
at that.
high energy, man.
It's so wonderful to see.
Sure.
You know, it's like you walk in and it's like, wow, that's Mr. Brand Ambassador himself right there.
Quintessential, right?
Yeah.
Is there anybody that you could say, from an acting perspective, actor-wise rather, that you channel or that you indirectly channel, that you say, I really like their presence on screen or on
Yeah,
stage?
I mean, Jennifer Lawrence all day, every day.
Oh my God, really? That's more of, I mean, you know, I'm about 10 years older than you, more than that. She was back in, you know, quote unquote, my day. But, oh no, excuse me.
Jennifer Lawrence? Yeah, who are you thinking of?
I'm thinking about Jennifer Connelly. See, I think I'm always thinking
Jennifer
about
Connelly, though, absolutely.
Different.
You know,
but
I mean, Jennifer Connelly, I mean, if we're talking about different actors, I mean, you look at somebody like Johnny Depp, Bradley Cooper, these people, their versatility in what they do is just outstanding.
Yeah.
You look at people like Chris Pratt and their transformation, and I think that's something too. I mean, it's that transformation of watching people grow.
Yeah.
I think of myself a year ago when I first started out being a brand ambassador. I came from living in Aspen in the mountains to moving to my first ever city of Chicago, and oh my God, what a jump that is! And to see how I've grown in a year.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's like, you know, and you watch these actors, they change so much from role to role.
Profoundly.
And it's, in a way, you know, you see us go from role to role and from situation to situation, and we're always acting in these different ways. It's very cool to you know.
It's cool to see it, and when it feels sincere, I like it a lot.
Absolutely, and that's
think
one of the
there's
big things. There's a fine line between that and the brand ambassador world. You know,
That's right.
You see a lot of people who they really are. They have that brand messaging drilled into them.
Right. It's almost rote.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you know, when you love something so much, it becomes a part of you.
Yeah.
And so we just had a very interesting talk with Trevor Schneider and David Allardyce from Glenfiddich, and they said this wonderful idea about being genuine, you know, and like, where's that work-life balance? Because we love what we do so much.
Yeah.
Really, how do you switch it off? And do you ever switch it off? You know, when you go out with your loved ones for a meal, technically you're still working and you have this heightened sensitivity to the service industry. So do you ever switch off, or I guess we've made a choice, you know?
No, that's an interesting thing. Where does the brand end and you begin?
It's very true.
Philosophically, because you have these choices about how you want to be perceived in the public eye. You're on TV, you're doing conferences, you know, you're doing chats like this, and then at the same time, which pieces do you want to keep to yourself? I mean, your private life, perhaps even your romantic life, are these things you keep pretty close to the chest?
You know, it's a tough one, especially because the people we hang around with are the bar industry usually. You know, I think I'm in a unique position because I've been bartending since I was 18 in the UK, obviously, because you can bartend when you're 18 over there.
Lucky.
And I moved to the States when I was 21. So, you know, I've always been in the bar world. So it's kind of become part of me now. Whereas I think, you know, so there are some people who have come from another world, from another life. So they have two separate Facebooks, one for their personal life, one for the work. Whereas everything I have is all me. So, you know, I love that. I think it's great.
I think so too, but I do wonder, is there a risk as you get older and perhaps inevitably wiser, but you find a woman that maybe you want to start a family, and then these other tendrils start to form. Do you feel that there is a risk of having yourself be so transparent and so available digitally that perhaps you might have to bring it back in the future? I think
again, it's about that transformation. I think going through and learning about life. I mean, I'm spending my entire life looking for somebody to give up the left side of the bed for. Yeah, like 100%. And I can't wait to find that person. Like genuinely, you know. And it's such a fantastic time to grow and to learn. And I think it's about learning to grow with somebody too. So when I find that woman, I can really grow with them and you know, find that balance of where that brand life ends and where the personal life begins. You know, it's tough when you travel as much as I do. You know, I'm on the road a lot, not as much as some people, but it's definitely enough to keep me busy.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny, and we'll talk about Dave here.
I happen to live 8 blocks away from him in Chicago.
That's what I heard. Yeah, you guys live really close. Yeah, it seems like he, you know, I don't worry about him. He's always good, but like, when's Dave gonna settle down and find a nice girl?
Oh, you know, he's probably got women flaunting after him. He's so fantastic.
And he just is disinterested almost. It's so funny.
No, he's such a great guy. I think, but he's one of those people. He plays it, you know, close to his chest too. So it's great to have him as a mentor too. Like, you know, when I moved to Chicago, I didn't really know anybody. I knew 2 people who lived in the city out of however many millions live there, and to have him, as a new friend and as a mentor too. He was one of the people who taught me the most out of anybody.
Wonderful guy.
So it was really cool.
If I was, and I've talked to a couple people at William Grant Sons, if I was ever to make the transition, you guys are the crew of which I would want to join.
It's a fun family, and I truly mean that. Like, again, my whole the family thing has stuck with me from the beginning, but truly it was always watching them at events. I saw how close knit and how beautiful the interactions were, and I was like, I would love to be part of that.
It's amazing thing.
And so it's to be part of it now from this side is so cool to see, and it's truly, you always call people and you're asking advice, and no matter what brand they're on, there's always insights that people can give you. So having started off sort of my brand ambassador life with William Grant, not any companies previously really, I've been taking and learning from the best in the industry, so it's really cool to see how they all play together.
Your experiences as you travel, and we're fellow mates in gin, I would say. We have lots of experience with it. Love gin. Hendrick's is... Apparently the people are saluting us.
Outside. I love that.
They heard it. They support it as well. But people, being out there, kind of soft selling, talking to people, creating a community of gin lovers, or bringing people into that community. In the time you've been doing this role with Hendrick's, how has that conversation been? People open to it, or they're very...
Absolutely. I think the gin ambassadors here in the US are absolutely fantastic, and we're some of the greatest characters. I was downstairs yesterday and I saw a good friend of mine who's a gin ambassador as well, and I was like, oh, what's up? And it's great to see, because gin is an amalgamation of beautiful flavors. It's botanicals, right?
Sure.
So in Hendrick's, we use our Symphony of 11 botanicals with our two soloists of Rose and Cucumber. And it's this, everything is individual. You can pick out a flavor to highlight in a cocktail, right?
Right.
Us gin ambassadors, we're all our own botanicals that create this amazing family in the US, right? And it's this crazy amalgamation of people. And so when you get us in the rooms together, you start to see that gin is not what people, there was, I had a bad experience with gin in college. And I'm like, you need to come out with us.
Right.
Give it a second shot.
Uplifting experience.
Yeah, it truly is.
So why gin? You had... there's lots of other spirits that have some kinds of roots in the UK.
Absolutely. I actually started out working in tiki bars. That was my first thing. Yeah. So in Chester, there was a great tiki bar that opened up with some of the best bartenders in town opening this place.
Yeah.
And so I worked there for a little bit, and everybody sort of moved on relatively quickly from there, which left me kind of in a position to move up through the ranks a little bit, which was nice. And then slowly but surely, I ended up, my friend Simon looked at me and he's like, you need to come work for me. So I went to
He looked in your eyes, didn't he? That'd be the best thing. He'd just stare at you like...
He was like, you need to go. But I still remember, it's funny how you think back and you're like, at the time, you're like, oh, I know everything, and you're thinking like, you actually know nothing. Yeah. And I remember I was bartending and, it's one of those things, I think I put some dirty ice back in a cocktail or something, you know what I mean? Like I'd already shaken it and I shook it again with another cocktail, and he was like, yeah, you got to come work for me. And so I learned from all the people, my family behind the bar, I learned immense amounts from them.
Yeah.
And it was cool to grow like that. So rum is something that has been instilled in me from when I was, I guess, a beginning bartender.
Right.
And so behind the bar, it's always been rum. And then obviously tiki drinks, I ended up finding a love for gin and the flavor that's in it.
The Saturn, man.
Yeah.
Classic.
Oh, God, amazing. Right? Absolutely. Like all absolutely fantastic cocktails. Like a fog cusser, I think, was the first
I haven't even had that
gin rum tiki cocktail I ever had, and I was like, wow, it's rum, cognac, gin, a little bit of orgeat,
it's a hell of a party,
pineapple,
man.
Like it was gorgeous cocktails, you know what I mean? And you're like, okay. And then when I started actually running bars and I was expanding my collections, I was like, wow, gin is something that's got so diverse anyway. So I started expanding my knowledge about that. And to be able to taste through all the different gins and really pick out the nuanced flavors, it just instilled this place in my heart.
Yeah.
And so, when the time came that the position opened up with Hendrick's, I was like, there's no chance I'm not going to jump at this to join the William Grant family.
Was there ever a time, when you finished up studying at Chester with the psychology bit, was there ever a point where you're thinking, maybe I'll go into higher ed, right? And I will maybe go into counseling and therapy. And we talked about it a little bit.
I'm a bartender.
Ago.
Same thing. If you think about it.
It's stiffer though,
Absolutely not. I hated my degree when I was there for my first year. Hated it. Oh, it was the worst. And all my friends, some of the people were in the same thing, and some were dropping out. And I was like, do you know what? Maybe I should drop out.
Yeah.
And I sat down. I remember I sat down with my mentor at university, and she was my I guess coach, you could say. Mm-hmm. And I explained my doubts, and I said how much I hated my degree. And she said, find the connection. And I was like, oh, God, of course. Like, it's just an Alan Watts record playing on repeat. Yeah, right? Like, it's just, do what you love and you'll make money. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Sounds great. And I was, was studying all this stuff, and we were doing, like, the therapy course and whatnot. And if I heard one more thing about Piaget's theory of development and 2-year-olds, I was going to, like, walk out of class, And then one day, a woman came into the bar, and she was crying. And I was like, oh, God, as every young bartender does, I have to deal with this.
Right.
My God, how annoying. But at the end of it, I helped her through a situation. And when she left, she was not crying. And she was smiling. And had I really done anything? No, I was a sounding board. Yeah. And I think that's key for bartenders to realize is you're not there to solve people's problems. So that immediately, if you realize that, and if you take that on board, it should take some of the mental stress away, because you deal with people's problems so much. Yeah. They're always talking, oh, my wife's this. I used to deal with people who were having affairs and stuff, and it's just kind of crazy to see that. That's big stress on you.
That is kind of like, what is it, client-patient confidentiality?
Exactly,
you think about
right?
that
and
kind
so
of
it adds a lot of mental stress. But at the end of the day, if you realize that you're not there to physically solve any problems, you should never say, do this, do that, whatever. You're there as a sounding board for them to come to a realization on their own.
Wow.
And that was something that had a huge impact on me. And so when I helped this lady through, I went home that night and I woke up in a fit of whatever it was halfway through the night. Mm-hmm. And I suddenly realized my passion and my career were going to collide together in this moment. And I couldn't sleep the whole night. I was so excited because I could see my life ahead of me. And I was like, wow, there is such an amazing psychology to bartending and hospitality. And that moment in my first year of university changed my whole life.
That's amazing.
And so I went back in the next day and I kind of rambled on to my lecturers about this, and they're like, oh my God, you're crazy. But okay. And even one of them said, why don't you just do something normal for your dissertation? And I looked at them, and I guess I probably should have known I was going to work for Hendrick's at this point, but I said, what's the point in that?
Yeah.
And I truly meant it, so that's when I did my psychology of hospitality focus.
Amazing.
And they loved it. It was great because it was so different and interesting. I probably should have studied sociology or philosophy, but
not so different, really.
Yeah, it's interesting trying to quantify the qualitative data. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so I was there, did interviews and coming up with themes and trying to make the numbers work from a psychological point of view. It was fun.
Very appealing to me. We both have a very similar background in that sense. When you think about the state, I'm just having this conversation downstairs with a fellow panelist. And she is about to facilitate a chat about mental health and ultimately psychological health here just in a few hours for the conference. And we started talking about it, and I realized perhaps people like you, perhaps people like me, we may be part of the solution in letting people talk their shit out with us.
It's funny. I mean, if you think about health insurance, right? We're the cheapest version of health insurance there is. If you need to go talk about a problem, hey man, $8 for a beer, and you're mine for the next 10 minutes. Like if it's a quiet night.
That's a great point.
But we live in a land of unsocialized medicine because at the end of the day, we are a wonderful. People often view us as an opportunity they say it lowers their guards and whatnot. But actually, at the end of the day, I feel like it's the idea of being around people that is actually the really beneficial aspect of what we do. And that, as bartenders, you have to be there for who the person on the other side of the bar needs you to be. So if you need to be that shoulder to cry on, go for it,
How do you feel about what is ultimately a thumb-based society, of which we are so head and eyes deep into our devices that we're really committing the atrocity of the opposite of community with our devices? Do you find that will become a larger and larger problem as people get so isolated that way?
I definitely think it's a part. I mean, growing up in sort of that crossover between the technological booms, I was on that cusp. I still had, I'm in my mid-20s, and so having that dial-up internet, I still remember that, where we didn't have the phones. We had the Nokia 3310. Like that was my first phone. Could never break it. It was perfect. And then progressing through to now, when I see people growing up, and I'm like, wow, you haven't looked up from your phone, and you're swiping left and right. And we're in a society where we can't actually approach somebody and say, hi, I'd like to buy you a drink. And then they look at you like you're like a crazy person.
Right.
But if you swipe right and you match, all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I love this person, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with them. It's like, oh, how did that come about?
Transactional relationships. It's built on a foundation of us matching on certain attributes. Some people are great on paper. Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically judging a book by its cover.
That's exactly
That's what we're doing now. It's like everything is this, if I get liked this much, all of a sudden I'm going to feel better in myself, which actually, I mean, it's a scientific fact. Like as soon as you get a like, right, it releases endorphins in your mind and it makes you feel good. And so every time I know when I post a picture and it starts going viral, I'm like, yes. Yeah. And you get this little rush and it's great. But I don't think that's something to base your life on.
Well,
and it's very interesting to see that, like kind of especially in the industry, right? Because it serves that dual purpose. Yes, okay, it's a little superficial and we don't get that interaction, but I've met some amazing people and actually now some of my closest friends through this social media. So it branches everything out and allows it to be very easy.
It's, again, knowing when the social persona ends and you begin.
Yeah.
Right. It's that balance again.
It's about utilizing a tool in its most effective way.
Yeah.
And I think about it could be a moment, a situation, or whatever it is, but if you can really nurture it and use it to your advantage, go for it.
Absolutely. Do you ever feel, not an obligation, I mean, so here's the thing, we're going to talk about it. The gin and tonic's classic, and we're both sipping it. I'm just really comfortable right now. This is really nice.
Yeah, this is perfect.
But the psychology thing, we talked about it. We knew we were going to kind of dive into it a little bit. When you think about your peers, not the hierarchy of what is ultimately someone that's working for the establishment and then a customer comes in. This is definitely a predetermined hierarchy there. But for your peers that experience the stress, the hustle and bustle of this industry, do you feel some kind of responsibility, not because of your role, but because of who you are as a man of the people, someone who likes community? Do you feel like you have some sense of duty to be a shoulder to cry on?
I mean, it goes back to the old adage of, treat thy neighbor as you want to be treated, right? Like if you just want to, if you're a nice person, and if you're just if you are genuine about what you do, if you want to help people, go ahead and do it. Like that's.
But that there's this interesting thing though. Some people, obviously, most people in the hospitality industry can have great flowing conversations, but at the same time, not everybody's really easy, and they're not comfortable with being honest about their pain and about their inadequacies, to use a psychological term. Mm-hmm. But I feel like you probably get people that feel very comfortable talking to you about those things.
It's a very interesting, when you're talking about the direction of relationships. As a brand ambassador, we're there to cover multiple bases and to run around and talk to everybody and again mold to those different situations. So you often find people open up to you in a very interesting way, and then when you go to open up to them, you start to realize, like, actually, how much do I really want to share? Because you have this, again, the role, and it's that work-life balance to how much do you want to share with people. But I think it always serves such a wonderful purpose, and you feel great for being there for somebody. And I think if you think that person could ever be there for you, then I mean, you help out where you can.
Yeah. Well, I think you're going to be helping out a lot of people. See, it's nice because you have the psychological background, so you can talk to people, but also you can pour a quite lovely gin and tonic. So you are a double, if not triple threat to folks. So, in other words, your dating life's going to be wonderful. It's going to be very productive here probably in the next 10 years.
Oh, well, thank you.
I think that it'll be, you guys will be, whoever it is, very model-like, beautiful couple like David Bowie, right? And his wife. So
hopefully modeling in personalities.
I think so.
And melding in that respect. Yeah, melding of minds.
That's exactly right. So, Hendrick's, for you connect to the, what did you call it? The unusuality, which is a word I have not heard before, but I really
is it a word?
Like it. I don't know.
We tend to make stuff up at Hendrick's and we go with it. And we're like, this works.
For you, connecting, it's pretty clear why you would connect with that brand, why you would connect with the sense of family at William Grant & Sons. But for you, if you were just to simplify it and go to a guy on the street and say, I like Hendrick's gin, it's a piece of me, what's the perfect gift to that guy for you in terms of a cocktail?
In terms of a cocktail?
Yeah, because I kind of feel it's a gin and tonic, and maybe I'm leading the question, but...
there's, I think it goes into that, the world of Hendrick's is so diverse.
Yeah.
And I love Hendrick's in its most simple form in a martini.
Oh, yeah.
But the bartender, drinksmith, mixology side of me is like, but a martini is not simple. It might be in terms of ingredient list. It's like
the inner
gin.
Conflict must be terrible.
But then so I'm writing a book about martinis, actually.
Are you really?
It's why I carried the teacup.
I didn't realize.
So everywhere I go, I ask a bartender, I will take a Hendrick's gin martini as you wish. And I give them the simple instructions. If they need a little more guidance, I'll give it. But that's my base phrase that I use.
Right.
A, Princess Bride is my favorite movie, so As You Wish comes from there.
Mr. Montoya is one of my idols.
Oh, absolutely. And but also I feel like I get to know a bartender a little bit better by making that martini, right?
Sure.
And so how they would like to drink it, because it's as they wish. It's not thinking about me. I know how I like my martinis, so I'm like, I want to see how they like theirs.
Yeah.
And so then you start to realize that the simple is not so simple. And that might be that Hendrick's, where we actually have delved so much into all of these different aspects about the creative process and the creativity that has gone into making this with Leslie Gracie and how fantastic she is in Scotland. It's a very interesting concept you ask about that. Yeah. What would the perfect gift be?
Brilliant. I think that's perfect though. It's a way to invite someone into the conversation, and it's almost completely selfless.
Yeah, but hey, you can never go wrong with the gin and tonic.
No.
Yeah, and I think the freshly sliced cucumber.
Yeah, it's kind of great.
It just keeps it fresh, keeps it alive, and it's truly fantastic. So that's probably, it would be a great intro to anybody, as long as you're using good tonic and good, and obviously.
So a writer as well. So not only an actor, a thriving psychologist, a man that likes martinis. You're also writing a fucking book, really?
Trying, yeah. It's wonderful. I mean, again,
Tim is writing a book too, isn't he?
About wonderful Irish whiskey distilleries and everything. It's funny. The idea comes from it's what we do, right?
Yeah.
As a bartender, I lived in this perpetual state of creative tension, and transitioning to the brand ambassador role. Yes, believe me, I have to be so creative for work, but I'm no longer standing in my area, surrounded by a backboard of absolutely fantastic products to whip up and think about flavor combinations anymore.
Yeah.
I'm flying. I have to do expense reports and PowerPoint presentations and Excel documents and all this stuff for this crazy other side of the brand ambassador role that nobody sees.
Yeah.
So you have to make time to be creative. And by making time to be creative, you can find your own ways to do that. And writing is one of those for me. Tidbits of poems, and even writing something as simple as an Instagram quote that you're going to put attached to your picture can be such a fantastic experience.
Because it's intentional and there's constraints to it. I love it.
And it's again seeing things in an interesting light. I was riding my I ride a penny farthing around Chicago, which is one of the old school bikes with the big front wheel and the small back wheel, and it is a Hendrick's bike. But I have my old school aviation helmet I wear with goggles.
You do have. I was going to ask about the goggles.
It's cold in Chicago.
You don't have a sidecar on it, do you?
No, I don't know. Penny farthing sidecar. You might have just created a new piece of POS.
Well, and then you put a nice little cute, strange looking dog in there. That's even more of an.
That's fantastic. We do have the Hendrick sidecars for the motorcycles, but. Yeah, it's funny how. So I was riding through Chicago, and I remember I got home and I'd had the most beautiful day. It was fall, the leaves were changing, and all of a sudden I was looking up at the sky when I was riding, and I was like, "What a beautiful situation!" And I got home and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And the old bartender of me probably would have transformed that into a drink or a cocktail or something. But as a brand ambassador, when you're on the go and you can't really make cocktails in the airport too well, I started to realize, I was like, cool. So I put it into a one sentence or two sentence Instagram quote, and I said, 2 days before tomorrow, I ambled along the roads of Chicago atop my penny farthing. The sunshine like powdered gold amidst the trees, clothed in green, my heart ablaze with happiness. And that to me was a wonderful little tidbit of creative outlet that made me feel good. And I mean, if you have that outlet, you can decrease your stress levels, and everything comes into play.
Yeah, it's amazing. I like it. And I surely hope that you get into reading audiobooks. Being the narrator, you get a lot of money for that.
That would be a fun journey.
Yeah,
I'll have to
just you reading those 2 lines of poetic beauty.
Having to put the deep voice on.
That's right.
Good morning, world.
I'm sorry, I can't do that. No. I'll get 2 questions left for you before we kind of go into this beautiful sunny day here in San Antonio. First is, and I really have no idea how you answer this, which I really appreciate. I ask this of everybody, and let's say you're anywhere in the world, perhaps Nightjar, I don't know, you'd have a gin and tonic, let's say, and you could have that gin and tonic in a conversation and a sip with anybody, living or deceased. Who may you like to sit and wax poetic with?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, aside from Jennifer Lawrence, because she's my favorite. That's a great question,
It changes.
I'd have to say my grandfather.
Oh yeah.
I never got to meet him, and I feel like we would have gotten on really well.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to have had just enough time over a gin and tonic to delve into his life, just a little bit.
gin guys are always the best, aren't they?
Yeah, he was.
Well, besides Scotch
and he was
guys.
he was a psychologist in Brooklyn, New York.
No kidding.
Yeah, and there's actually apparently there's a bench at, I think it's Woodrow High School that has his name on it, and it's
That's amazing.
Alvin Solomon. And I think if I could spend the length of time of a gin and tonic with anybody, it would probably be him.
Wow. There's that movie, man. It escapes my thought, like In Time, I think is what it's called, where you can go back in time, but you can only spend a certain moment with somebody. With Bill Nye, isn't it?
About Time.
About Time. Thank you.
One of my favorite movies of all time.
Tom Gleason. I can't remember his first name, but yes, really love it.
Donald Gleason or something.
Yeah, something like
something
that.
like that.
It's an interesting name. But it's that kind of moment.
Oh, great movie.
We have to seek those moments out, I think.
Absolutely.
A last question for you while you are here in San Antonio. You got anything left to accomplish? Anything on your docket that you're really looking forward to doing here in the next few days?
Try and get as many smiles in as possible.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, no, genuinely. I mean, like, San Antonio is such a great city.
Yeah.
It's one of those markets you go to, and you're like, every time you go, there's more and more things to explore.
Sure.
And so it's just trying to fit it all in and really get in there and to meet people. It's again, this event is so fantastic because you get to network and meet all fantastic people.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I've got a wonderful weekend of relaxation ahead at the Hendrick's Ministry of Relaxation we're putting on, which is going to be great.
Are there like a bunch of cucumber seats and stuff like there?
Cucumbers in general, for sure. Yeah, I mean, hey,
they don't make for good structural components. Just to say, they get soft and English
we got
cucumbers.
Cucumber massages going. Let's go. Whoops.
The Cucumber Club, kind of suggestive. Kind of suggestive. Well, it's good, mate. It was great meeting you in Austin.
Yeah, this is
just a few months
been
ago,
fun, yeah.
and you're just at the beginning of this amazing era.
Every journey begins with a single slice of cucumber. So,
I suppose it does.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay. It's great to chat.
Absolutely, this
More
was great.
gin in the future. Yeah,
we'll have another cocktail right now.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Great to see you.
Well, there we have it, the oh-so-charming Mattias Horseman sipping some amazing gin and tonics with Hendrick's Gin. This is a role that Mattias was born to play. He is suave, he is charming, he is charismatic behind the camera and in front of it, and I guess I should stop acting like his agent and trying to sell you guys on the product, the charming, stunning product that is Mattias Horseman. Hopefully we'll get to see each other soon, and I really hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. I hadn't talked to Mattias much, and it was an instant party, instant comedic gold. So thanks everybody for listening to Show to V with Mike G. No matter if you're considering Bob's Burgers to be one of the greatest TV shows ever made, or if you're thinking Ocean's 8, I don't know if I should see it or not. Sandra Bullock can lead quite a good movie. Please keep dancing.